What's up, losers? Today I'm back with some more r/fatlogic hijinks. Taking a look at a couple of eyebrow-raising fat acceptance posts. Sharing my opinions on them. And having a little fun at their expense. This is episode 129 in the fatlogic series. And I'm ready to crush some fat activist dreams. So without further ado, let's get into it.
I let my kids eat candy for breakfast. And yes, I'm a dietitian. No, this is not an oxymoron. And yes, I care about my children's health and well-being. Very much so. Let me explain. Summer's here, the candy seems to be out in full force. And with more of it around, and more access at birthdays, parties, friends' houses, etc., my kids have naturally been more interested in eating it. The norm is to wait until dinner, or to even withhold any sweets until after eating a meal. But why? Who made these rules? Kids begin to form rules around food from young ages, based on what they learn and hear around food, especially sugar, including things like dessert is only after dinner, or you have to eat your veggies first before you get dessert. But are these rules helpful in supporting children in building a healthy relationship with food? The truth is, rigid rules around sweets only put these sweets on a pedestal for kids. Anything that feels forbidden instantly becomes more desirable, and when kids show a higher interest in candy, especially during this time of year, where more sweets abound, they actually need more exposure to it within the context of their meals and snacks. This helps offer them structure and support around a food that can already be emotionally charged. Kids need unconditional permission to explore all foods equally, to learn how to self-regulate what feels best in their bodies. And this is only possible in the absence of food rules. So allowing your kids to have candy with breakfast might seem unconventional. But in reality, you're giving your child permission to learn to eat without food rules involved. When kids are allowed to eat sugar in the absence of rules, they're better able to listen to their internal cues, to regulate their appetites, and learn how to trust their bodies.
Excuse me, but what the frick? We're letting kids just figure it out as they go along now, are we? We're not teaching them anything, or offering any kind of guidance. We're just trusting that they will make totally rational decisions for themselves, and develop healthy and sustainable habits, all on their own. Have I got that right? Well, gee, I see no way this could possibly go wrong. What a terrific idea. No, but seriously, I don't care if this person is a dietitian or not. The idea that you can simply allow children to eat whatever, whenever, and however much they want, in the hope that their internal cues will kick in, and they'll happen to stumble their way into a healthy diet, is astronomically stupid. Maybe 1 in 100 will, but the vast majority will gravitate towards calorically dense, nutritionally bankrupt, tooth-rotting garbage, and they won't have the knowledge to see the damage that they're doing to their health. Because how would they? You haven't given it to them. I understand that at a certain point, all kids have to grow up and start making their own choices. And this includes the food that they eat. But I really don't think that this transition should be happening until their preteen or teen years, when they have a solid foundation for healthy eating, and enough capacity for long-term thinking to see why eating candy all day is a bad idea. Because if you throw them in the deep end at the age of 7, they're going to sink. It's as simple as that. Would I be advocating for children to have no treats whatsoever? Of course not. That sounds like a miserable childhood. And I can actually see how it would put treat foods on a pedestal, in the way that the post describes. But I do believe that parents and caregivers should have a role in moderating their kids' consumption of these foods. And if they fail to do so, they are not fulfilling their parental responsibility. And they should be criticized for their failure to act, not applauded for it.
Shouty Modman post. We have got to talk about food and fat shaming. Y'all, it is against the rules of this group. Rule 2, and yet it is probably the most common rule break the Modman team sees. Food shaming includes assigning moral value to food, calling certain foods junk, or synonyms thereof, implying that certain ingredients or macronutrients should be avoided, and victim-blaming people that are chronically ill, neurodivergent, fat, etc. by implying that if they had eaten different, or less, or organic, they would be healthy. This also falls under the no ableism rule. Telling people they should only eat organic, or non-GMO, is also food shaming. This is not an exhaustive description, so use common sense here. Fat shaming includes implying that fat people are inherently unhealthy, or that they could be thin if they ate less, exercised more, ate differently, dieted, etc. A person's size does not necessarily reflect their health, or their health risks. Fat people do not necessarily eat more or exercise less than thin people. Diets don't work, and diet culture is incredibly harmful. Fat people are not lazy, are dirty, or unattractive, due to their size. Again, this is not exhaustive, so, common sense again. Please keep this bump with food memes and GIFs. Does not permit food or fat shaming. Continuing to do so, may result in a mute.
Okay, so, apparently this one came from a science group, of all places. Which makes it extra funny. Because like, denying that fatness is unhealthy, or claiming that it's impossible to lose weight through diet and exercise, are not what I would call scientifically supported positions, and I have to wonder how such demonstrably bogus notions would take root in apparently science-minded people. Along similar lines, I find the repeated calls for group members to use common sense in determining what is and is not appropriate to say rather amusing, like, it really is. Do as I say, not as I do. Isn't it? Because there's precious little sense, common or otherwise, to be found in the post itself. But I digress. As far as my personal thoughts on the issue go, I certainly don't believe in fat-shaming people, and I can see how rude and unsolicited remarks about people's weight and/or eating might be a problem for the group admins to deal with. But the way these admins define food shaming and fat shaming is nothing short of ridiculous. Like, acknowledging the nutritional composition of different kinds of foods is not food shaming, and neither is recognizing the important role that diet plays in a person's health. Acknowledging that weight loss is possible through diet and exercise is not fat shaming, and neither is recognizing that obesity is unhealthy. Defining these terms in such a way not only problematizes totally valid, important, and scientifically grounded conversations, but it also stretches the term's applicability to the point that they lose all meaning, and people who want to call out real instances of fat shaming are left without the necessary language to do so, because this ridiculousness has rendered the actual word fat shame totally unusable, and that's not helpful for anyone. So basically, I don't think this post is correct in its presentation of the facts, nor in its assessment of what is and is not shaming. And I think that it's doing a disservice to fat people, and the genuine mistreatment that they undoubtedly encounter, to saddle the term fat shaming with so much anti-scientific baggage. My final comment on the post regards the use of the term victim blaming, with reference to telling fat people that they could be healthy if they ate differently. I find this highly inappropriate, not to mention inaccurate, and I'm at a loss as to what the poster was thinking when they worded things in such a way. Like, fat people are not victims of their poor diet choices. They made those choices, for better or for worse. And the only person who is responsible for the choices is the fat person themselves. To compare this to a situation of abuse or assault, where there is an actual perpetrator to blame, and the victim has most certainly not brought their suffering upon themselves, is mind-bendingly dumb, and legitimately offensive in its trivialization of such crimes. Sarah, yeah, let's not go there again. Okay, cool, moving on.
You know who is still watching their weight? The 95-year-old lady in the nursing home. who passed on her birthday cake. The dieting mindset can literally last until the day you die. No better time to change that mindset than now.
Man, I'll never understand what compels fat activists to post stuff like this. If the goal is to scare people off dieting, because if anything, reminding everyone that people who watch what they eat might be, alive, at 95, reads as more of an endorsement than anything else. Birthday cake abstention notwithstanding. Even aside from this, rather puzzling messaging choice, though, the premise of the post is just wrong, and demonstrates the inability to comprehend moderation that, at this point, can only be described as a fat acceptance staple. Like, just because someone generally makes an effort to watch their weight and moderates their consumption of foods like cake accordingly, does not mean that they cannot treat themselves on special occasions. And especially not on an occasion that literally comes once a year, haha. It's not as if the moment that single slice of cake touches your lips, you instantly put on 100 pounds, and the button on your pants goes flying across the room. You'll be just fine. It's not going to have any observable or measurable impact. And everyone understands that. It's pretty clear to me that fat activists only feel the need to exaggerate like this because they are framing themselves and their own eating habits in opposition to something, and they know that openly taking a stand against basic moderation will make them look like gluttonous clowns. So they rely on laughable misrepresentation to convince themselves that they are, in fact, the moderate ones, and everyone else is a crazy diet nut, with no life or capacity for fun. In all honesty, I just find this reliance on willful self-deception sad. Like, be honest with yourselves. It's not everyone else who has a problem with food. It's you. There's nothing to be gained from playing these silly games. And you're not fooling anyone. So at the end of the day, why even bother? I'm sure there's better things we could all be doing with our time. Just something to mull over. Well, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you had a grand old time reading through these posts with me, and hearing me respond to them. What do you think? Should we let kids eat candy for breakfast? Or whenever else they want? In the hope that their internal cues will eventually guide them towards something a little healthier. How would you define fat shaming and food shaming? Does managing one's weight require one to skip cake on the 95th birthday? Let me know in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, or I'll ship you off to a miserable nursing home, steeped in diet culture, and the only thing you'll get on your birthday is cold, plain porridge. Just kidding, haha. Anyway, catch you later.